Morning world, it's about 7 o'clock in the morning on the 9th of December 2013, a few hours after my last video. It's still dark out there. This is my video on Uranus through the 2nd and the 8th house. Uranus is change bringer, we know this. But the 8th house and the 2nd house, relating to Taurus and Scorpio, they're not the most flexible and adaptable of houses. They deal more with the durability, the perseverance, the stubbornness, the solidity of life. And Uranus and these concepts are not exactly the best of friends. Uranus, when it's under difficult aspect in the 2nd house, can be a really difficult position, one of the hardest of all. It can be either the person who is a fanatical hoarder and collector of possessions. These are the people who never throw rubbish away. Uranus in a difficult position in the 2nd house can be someone who will never let go of that old fish finger packet because of the competition that's 30 years out of date. They keep old newspapers from the 1960s in case they need to read it again. Uranus in the 2nd house has a fear of letting go of things when it's in a difficult position, because sometimes material resources are the only way they can gauge worth in themselves. In a neutral position, Uranus in the 2nd house is quite ambivalent towards the idea of possessions, materials, money, resources. Uranus in the 2nd house sees the material world as functional. It is there for a purpose. It is there to be used. It is not about collecting and saving, nor about giving or releasing. It is about using. With Uranus in a neutral position in the 2nd house, functionality and effectiveness when it comes to dealing with the resources of life is always going to be fairly high on the agenda. And these are the people who will buy things to use. They will not buy for pleasure. They will not buy the latest state-of-the-art DVD or the latest clothing from New York or the London's King's Road. They will buy effective and efficient things. Uranus positive in the 2nd house, that's going to bring with it a kind of ambivalence in a healthy way towards resources and materials. With Uranus under positive aspect, the ability, it's not going to be that there's going to be lots of resources and materials. That's never the case with Uranus in the 2nd house. But with a positively aspected Uranus in the 2nd house, you're going to be able to attract the resources that you need at whatever given time from wherever. There's always the ability to manifest. Not a bad thing. Uranus retrograde in the 2nd house can lead to an absolute abhorrence of possessions. This is the person who can really be the ascetic, who can live in a monastery with a sackcloth. Uranus negative in a difficult way in the 8th house, in the Scorpio house, it actually can produce such a degree of, not fear, but potential phobia around value, being of value in oneself, finding true value in oneself, or being in resources in oneself. But it makes you think about, well, what is the long-term viability of anything in my life? What makes real value, and how do I deal with this fear of having too much or having too little? And the answer is by going to the extremes, I'm afraid, folks. With Uranus in the 8th house, there is no middle ground. You have to go through times of paucity and times of excess to find out the middle road and find out where your real values are. Uranus in a neutral way in the 2nd house, in the 8th house, does bring a kind of understanding of how money flows in the world and works in the world. And it gives a comfort, an ease in dealing with external resources, whether it's loans, mortgage, inheritance, tax rebate. And Uranus in a positive way in the 8th house has an understanding of where money originates from, how value comes from, where value comes from, whether it's in terms of warmth and food, whether it's in value of property or money or monetary value. But with Uranus in a positive way in the 8th house, none of these things are going to be a trap. This is a person who can rise out of value, can have it all and then have nothing and still be rich all the time. Their real values are not just material. And Uranus retrograde in the 8th. There is something a little bit spooky about this position. It does give an unusual understanding of the different types of value systems in the world, and B, it does give a little bit of precognitive, somewhat spooky, somewhat electrical precognitive ability. Catch you later.